Okay, hi everyone, and welcome to the entrepreneur interview, where we will be interviewing an entrepreneur every week and set up a call after to reflect on our key takeaways. So, without further ado, let's begin. So, I'm Burke Wellborn. I'm 21 years old, and I'm a Dalhousie student interested in entrepreneurship.
I'm Aidan Cook, also 21, a Dalhousie student, interested in entrepreneurship as well. This interview aims to break down what we have learned this semester, connect it to our interview, and reflect on it. We hope this Entrepreneur Innovator series sparks your interest and that our conversations will make you think about entrepreneurship differently.
Okay, so now let's begin.
In this video, we reflect on our interview with Kim Peary, the founder of North Point School for Boys in Calgary. Kim, 58, is a mother of three boys who was very disappointed with the current school system. It had failed her children, and she knew that it was time for a change.
I think it's so interesting how she identified a niche market and then targeted it.
Yeah, me too. I thought that it was interesting to see firsthand, especially.
Yeah, so anyways, our goal here is not just to tell her story, but it's to break it down through the lens of what we learned in the new venture course this semester. So we'll be walking you through Kim's experience and then showing you how it aligns with the 24-step framework that we learned about in disciplined entrepreneurship and explain what her journey taught us about the influence of culture, the use of resources, and the strengths and limitations of the entrepreneurial process model. So, starting with Aulet's framework, just a little bit of an overview from the textbook. It's a 24-step guide that is designed to help entrepreneurs move from identifying an opportunity to building a business. And it begins with step zero, which starts with should I do this? And then it ends with step 24, where you actually scale the business.
Exactly. What we found interesting in our conversation with Kim is that while she never followed all that steps formally, her story still reflects many of the ideas behind them, especially around purpose, identifying a specific market, and testing her assumptions.
Yeah, and her journey actually taught us that the framework is not always followed exactly, but it's kind of just a suggestion. And sometimes in like Kim's case, it unfolds more organically and out of order, but it still follows those same entrepreneurial principles.
Oh, when Kim mentioned my journey was anything but linear, this stood out to me. It reinforced my previous ideas about entrepreneurship. I knew that nothing would always go as planned when starting something completely new from the ground up. But I also was unsure because all that steps seemed like you had to follow them.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And hearing Kim say that was eye-opening and reassuring to know that it doesn't always have to go as planned. So, Aidan, let's talk about Kim's background. How do you think that her identity and values shaped her venture?
Well, I think Kim's motivation to start North Point came directly from her experience as a mom. She told us how frustrating it was to sit in parent-teacher interviews and hear that her sons were too energetic or disruptive. That really hit home. Instead of seeing her sons as a problem, she started questioning the system, and that's where the idea began.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting how she had so much credibility in the community, and that just came from being a parent, not exactly a professional. And she already had a good network of families, teachers, and just local schools around her that could support her and give her momentum early on.
I mean, yeah, I'm glad you brought this up. This reminded me of that quote we discussed in class. Aldrich and Cliff said that entrepreneurs don't operate in a vacuum. They're shaped by the social and cultural systems around them. That's exactly what I saw with Kim. Her cultural identity, her values, and her community connections were essential to the school's founding.
Yeah, and then she told us that being a mother gave her authenticity and that she wasn't just pitching an idea, she actually knew what she was doing. And at first, when I heard about being socially embedded in class and from some of the groups that presented, I didn't really understand it. But now, hearing it from Kim, it's so much more understandable.
I completely agree. Well, Burke, one thing Kim emphasized was that she didn't have a massive amount of startup capital. What stood out to you about how she handled that?
Honestly, I think it was how creative she was, and she repurposed spaces and, found furniture and got help from teachers and parents that she knew that believed in her mission.
Yeah, that's true. I forgot about how she borrowed um, furniture and leaned on others when she needed it. This reminds me of the textbook term where you make the absolute most of limited resources you have. I just can't remember the name.
I think it's parsimony.
Yes, that's the word I'm looking for.
Yes. Yeah, Kim most definitely exemplified the definition of parsimony.
Yeah, she riled me up so much on her social capital, relationships with mentors, educators, even parents in the pickup line. She did her market research through conversations, not surveys. It was super organic.
Yeah, and it brought the trim framework to life for us because she had a team, a clear resources, a good idea, and a specific market.
Yes, it's funny you bring this up because I'm just now realizing that she totally used the term framework. She mentioned her team, resources, idea, and market so many times.
And then for overcoming obstacles, what about the challenges she faced? I know she shared a few with us.
Biggest one was definitely skepticism. A lot of people questioned whether a boys only school was necessary.
Yeah, that's a great point. But she didn't back down. Instead, she leaned on feedback and talked to people and turned criticism into action. And that's kind of from step 21 with testing key assumptions and adjusting based on what she learned.
Exactly. Her grit and adaptability really stood out.
I think it also ties with step 22 from the 24 step model, where you have a minimal viable business product. And because she didn't launch it with a massive school right away, she started small and asked people for feedback before she expanded.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, and that definitely fits. But I'd actually argue this reflects step 10, define your core just as much. She was so focused on understanding the one thing that would make her school succeed, and that was creating an environment specifically designed for how boys learn. Everything else, like the furniture, class size, even daily routines, revolved around that core.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Aidan. She wasn't just reacting to criticism. She was actually refining her model around what matters most.
Yeah, and I think it shows how steps like 10 and 21 can really work together. You define your core, but then you constantly test and improve.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It's super cool to talk about this because when we asked Kim, she said that other steps were more instrumental for her, but now that we talk about it, we're realizing that some other steps were also like 10 and 21.
Yeah. All right. So, Burke, when we explain Aulette's framework to her, what steps do you think she agreed with the most? Because I know we had a long conversation. I just want to know what you took away from the conversation.
I think hands down, she resonated with step zero the most because she said everything stemmed from her mission and it wasn't about money or just a business opportunity, but she wanted to solve a real problem. And she also said that she aligned with steps 1 to 3, where she had identified a target market and understood her users.
All right. And what about what she didn't connect with?
I think she didn't really like the idea that all the steps needed to happen in order. And she said, as we mentioned, that my journey was nothing but, or was anything but linear. And that stuck with me and you because all its model gives kind of structure, but it's not a perfect fit for every business venture. And then, Aiden, what do you think she struggled with the most?
Oh, she said dealing with financial forecast was hard for her. She said that she wasn't focused on spreadsheets or forecasting early on. Her energy went towards the curriculum and building relationships over time, or building relationships. Over time, she filled those knowledge gaps by hiring people who are strong in those areas.
Yeah, it's a good reminder to us that there's no founder is good at everything, and the goal isn't to master every step. It's supposed to surround yourself with the right support. Okay, so for the key entrepreneurial takeaways, one of the most valuable things that Kim told us was to not treat these frameworks like strict rules. And she said to use them as guides, but not to be afraid to go off the script.
Yeah, she said the best ventures are personal and authentic. If you lose that, no amount of other skills will save your business.
Yeah, exactly. And looking back to when we started this semester, like we've gone from studying these frameworks in a textbook to actually seeing how it plays out in real life with an entrepreneur. And the shift in the perspective is probably the most important thing that we'll take with us. And we've learned that it's important to rely on those around you and ask for help.
I mean, think like you're building a quilt and not a puzzle.
Yeah, that's a good analogy from class.
Yeah, I also think we both developed a great awareness of diversity and inclusion in entrepreneurship and new venture creation.
I agree because one of the things Kim said she struggled with was, you know, as a woman starting a business and starting a school, she felt that she might have not, had a voice or gotten the respect she deserved.
Yeah, well, and I think this is a big takeaway because, like, I never thought about this before the course.
Yeah, and then even during the course when groups presented and we talked about the topic of and the role gender plays in entrepreneurship, it was hard to kind of understand, but now that we had this interview, I understand it a lot more.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for watching and be sure to tune in next week to hear our reflections on another interview we have with another bright entrepreneur. And we'll be releasing videos like this every Wednesday.
And a massive thank you to Kim Peary, my mother, for giving us a real, authentic, and human look at entrepreneurship.
Yeah. Thank you, Kim. And whether you're following 24 steps or just figuring it out, 1 minute, one conversation at a time, Kim reminded us that entrepreneurship is about solving real problems and staying connected to why we do it. Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching.